Taylor, the district administrator. You guys can introduce yourselves.
Mike Gentile, member at large.
Joe Hurst, treasurer.
Amy Regner, the clerk.
And we do have two board members, Brian Hopkins and Jim Walker, not here tonight due to medical reasons. But before I turn it over to Mr. Hurst, who will be running the beginning of the board or the beginning of the annual meeting, I'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, and this will be led by PAC 328, Boy Scouts PAC 328.
I'm Mike Serta.
I'm TJ Ricard.
Valerie Serta.
Tim Ricard. Welcome.
Thanks for coming,
Scout
guys.
salute and over heart. I pledge
Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for
Thank you
coming
so
in.
much.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Where do we bring the notes up? Sorry.
You're good.
Just a couple slides back. Okay, the annual meeting of the Silver Lake Salem Joint One is called to order. The annual meeting allows electors specific powers according to statutory requirements in a common school district. Electors are any individuals who are eligible to vote in the school district elections, i.e. residents of the district. All electors may participate and vote in the meeting. At this point, I'd like to open the floor for any nominations for a chairperson.
I'd nominate Joe Hurst.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing as that there's none, it's moved and seconded that myself, Joe Hurst, be elected as the annual meeting chairperson. Those in favor of the motion, please hold up your colored card. Looks like 7.
8.
8. Was there 8? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
8. My apologies.
I got you.
Those opposed, hold up their card. 0. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Myself, Joe Hurst, will be the 2024 annual meeting chairperson. Crystal Jostrab will serve as the legal determiner for the meeting tonight. Crystal, how many legal voters do we have present? All confirmed addresses? All right, thank you. This meeting is a meeting of the public and will follow the ground rules that are outlined in the handout they have been given. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, in this meeting, anyone that is a resident can vote when a motion is made. You will vote by card. I will ask in favor and you can raise your card. We will count the vote. I will ask all opposed and you can raise your card and we will again take a count. Majority will rule. Once a motion is made by someone at this meeting, a second is needed, and then I will call for a vote. The ground rules have been printed for all of you on the board. Are there any questions? All right, I will now call on the district administrator, Kim Taylor, to share the state of the district report.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Hurst. Tonight, I want to start by sharing some celebrations and highlights. Once again, Riverview has significantly exceeds expectations on the report card. We are 12th in the state for K-8 districts, so that's great news as well. We continue to outperform area districts on our state assessments and are continuing to look for ways to grow our students. Another big celebration from 23-24 is we completed our first strategic plan. It was exciting because it'll serve as the North Star, but also we had a lot of community involvement. And it will serve to unify us under one mission, vision, our values, and it helped also solidify some of our priorities. We're in the process of setting goals, and the leadership team will be bringing that forward to the board in October. And then one of the things that when I was hired last year, I was charged with the challenge of continuing to engage our community. So beyond the strategic plan, we also printed our first and mailed our first community newsletter. In the winter, we are getting prepared right now to print and deliver another community newsletter that's going to highlight our strategic planning, our new staff members, as well as the outcomes from our survey. which leads me to talking about our student and family surveys that we gave last year as benchmarks for moving forward to continue to grow and improve and celebrate our highlights. As you can see, we scored consistently at the agrees or strongly agrees level for culture, teaching, learning, and communication. So both our families and students rated us very high, and there was a lot to celebrate. But also, we continue to look for areas where we can improve. And then finally, another really big celebration is we spent some time internally looking at our multi-level systems of support and our SPED programming for students that require extra support. We did a gap analysis where we looked at data and looked at our internal systems and now are putting forth I would say a revamped process in both areas, including implementing a co-plan, co-serve model, and really focusing on literacy. So those were some exciting things that happened in 23-24 and things to celebrate as we're continuing to look at continuous improvement. At this point of the meeting, it is customary for me to read the report from the auditor, which is in your packets. So I'm just going to read the letter. It's short. It says, or I'll just pull it up, I
I
guess.
have it pulled up.
You have it pulled up? I'll read the letter off.
Do you have it?
Okay. Dear Mrs. Taylor, we are submitting this letter regarding the status of the audit of Silver Lake Joint 1 School District for the year ended June 30th, 2024, per your request. We have concluded a majority of the field work for the audit, submitted most reports to DPI, and anticipate that an unqualified opinion will be issued on all funds. Our anticipated delivery date for the audited financial statements is by December 15th, 2024. Okay, let me go back. Next is the treasurer's report that is included in your packet. And at this time, I'm just going to highlight some of the high-level things on the report. As you'll notice, we started the 23-24 school year with $2,115,017 on hand. As a reminder, that's just a snapshot in time. As the year went on, we had a total of $7,854,742 in revenues. Again, it's pre-audited. And then our expenditures for last school year, again, pre-audit, was $7,841,076. That leaves a balance on hand as of June 30th, 2024, $2,541,342. The second sheet, if you look at that, shows a more detailed information on each of the funds, what the revenues and expenditures were, and then the numbers at the bottom indicate our debt service for our principal in Fund 38. Then all of the board has received the annual minutes from last year. We do not take a vote on them. I'm presenting them at the annual meeting or at this meeting. Is there any questions? Okay. I'll turn it back to Mr. Hurst.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor, for the reports. At this point, I call for a discussion around board salaries for the 24-25 school year. As indicated in previous years, the board were paid $1,900 yearly, and we have received a payment for the 24-25 school year already based on that amount. We need to discuss if we will take a salary this year and what that salary will be. If we don't take a salary, we need to decide if we will make a motion as to whether we'll not take a salary moving forward for the entire school year, in which case the payment issued would need to be returned to the school district. I call for a motion including conference registrations, travel. Oh, I'm sorry, we need to discuss. So anybody got any perspective on this one? Open one.
Go ahead, Amy.
I personally think we should go back to receiving a salary. I know we try to give back quite a bit to the school, the communities, whether it be staff, walk around the candy. So I think we should go back to the salaries coming back to the board members.
I agree with Amy's sentiment, sorry. Not just because of all the other things that are going on, but obviously last year when we were having this discussion, we were kind of looking at a very different thing than I feel like we're at today. So I'm all in favor. Seems like we have a lot on our plate coming up, a lot more meetings, a lot more activities, a lot more things that are going to require more time, more investment, and more from us. So again, that's just my 2 cents.
So I see both those perspectives and I appreciate it. Obviously, we've dedicated a lot of time and energy, probably more so than previous boards in recent memory have, based on everything that we've taken on in the last couple of years. However, I still kind of feel like this is a position that you do out of a sense of responsibility. We're not flush, and there's some strong potentials that we're going to have to go to the community for money. And I just think that it goes a long way. Obviously, money is tough right now. The economy is not great. Everything's a lot more expensive, and everybody could use some extra income, especially for the amount of efforts that are put in for it. I just feel that it is a small token on our part to forego those salaries on an individual basis, while collectively it's somewhat impactful for the district. And so I would move for us to forego salaries again this year. As far as repaying what was already paid in, is there any idea of the amount of time or energy or effort that would have to go into repaying that portion of the salary that would make it not effective to do that? Or could we take the salary and say that was our salary for the year?
Sue or Tim, Mr. Schumacher, can you speak to what the board would have to do if they wanted to repay the amount that was paid to them in September?
I mean, from a clerical standpoint, from a time standpoint, how much it? I guess my question is it worth it for the time that would be invested to do it, from a financial standpoint, to do that, or would it be more financially beneficial to say, let's take that first payment and call that the salary for the year?
That would be a little bit easier because then you're not messing with like that Medicare.
Right, understood. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be that we take the first of the quarterly payments as the board salary for the year and forego the additional or the remaining from the 1,900. So is there any other comments regarding this? Anybody from the community is welcome to speak up.
I think the school board should be paid. I've been attending meetings by video lately, so I can't see the crowd, but assuming the crowd is pretty similar to what it is right now. I think the time and effort that is put in by those on the school board is worth that amount. I definitely do more than that. That's a greater value than what you're getting paid.
Yeah, I agree, guys, especially now. You guys have had so many more meetings and given up so much of your time and family time that I think it's time that you guys get your, like that isn't even enough to cover all your hours.
So I see all these points and I agree with them. I mean, I don't disagree with the notion at all. I think it would go a long way for community members to say, okay, here's a board who is truly invested. They put their money where their mouth is and they want the school to benefit. And I just think with what we're potentially facing in the next few years, that could be a nice uplift for the district.
I think if we were going to the community and asking for $15,000 or $20,000, the $9,500 that we're talking about might be impactful. But I mean, we're obviously looking at a number that's far larger than that, and whether we are compensated for being elected officials or not, it doesn't change whether we have to go ask the community for funds or fees or referendum dollars. So I guess, and again, not to take away from further discussion, but I would make a motion that board members are paid a salary of $1,900 a year.
I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and this is to include conference registrations, travel, and lodging expenses if necessary. All those in favor?
Aye. Sorry,
Amy, orange card, Amy.
I know, I'm sorry.
For the one-time payment?
No, this would be for the total salary. I'm sorry, I didn't clarify that, for the total salary of $1,900. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 in favor. All those against? Myself, so 1. Oops, sorry, I'm in the wrong spot here. The motion passes 7-1. So beyond any further discussion, it is moved and seconded that the motion carries. We're going down to the next one. Go back to you, Kim.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Okay, so I'm excited to review the 23-24 budget outcomes. I'm going to review that as well as the proposed 24-25 budget. And then we're going to conclude the meeting with the resolutions for both the tax levy and to set the date for the 25 annual meeting. So on the screen, you can see the 4 budgets highlighted. There are 4 main budgets. Fund 10 is our largest budget. Fund 10 is the general fund, is the fund where most of our revenues and expenditures come from. We are estimating for the 23-24, again, remember that this is pre-audited, about $72,000 under budget. Remember, according to the budget last year, we were looking at about a $79,000 deficit, and instead we're going to be adding to the fund balance of $72,000. Then if we look at our debt service fund, these are for the transactions for the repayment of debt issues that were not authorized by the school board resolution before August 12th, 1993, or had to be approved by referendum. The reason you see a deficit there is because we levy for the calendar year, but the expenses show the fiscal year. So it always shows as if we are overspending because of this, but we are not. It's just the 2 calendars that kind of get it messed up. Then our special education fund, Fund 27, reports our special education costs. It's a sub-fund, and it always has to have the sum of 0. Revenues that will include special ed categorical aid are in this fund, and a transfer from our general fund should we need it. That's why it always comes to a sum 0. And then finally, Fund 50 is our food services fund. So all revenues and expenditures that are related to the Fund 50 are for breakfast and lunch and anything else that would be would qualify under food services. If there's ever a deficit, we have to make it whole by making a transfer from our operating fund. You can see that it looks like we overspent, but that fund is quite large right now. And our goal is to spend it down because we only need 3 months of operating costs per DPI. We have excess of funds right now because of all the ESSER funds. We did purchase a dishwasher last year, which is part of why that fund looks like we overspent. And we are doing some purchases this year.
We'll show that next year. Then.
Yeah, that'll show next year. And then just a few highlights from the 23-24 budget. The general revenues came in a bit higher, as you can see, and the expenditures were a little bit lower, which is why we're able to add to our fund balance. Special education costs were up approximately $82,000 more than budgeted. That came from a student transferring in that needed more aid support. We needed a little bit more PT, and we had additional speech services that were not budgeted for. And then, of course, inflationary costs always impact budget outcomes too, but we conservatively plan for that every year so that we are staying fiscally responsible. And then just a quick snapshot of our fund balance over time. As you can see, our fund balance over the last 6 years have small variances, but our fund balance as of June 2023 looks like we're going to be at about 38% fund balance. We're expecting a bit of growth. Again, all of that will be finalized once the audit is done. And then, so now we'll move on to the 24-25 budget. There's 3 big factors that are still in play. So this is all estimates. Once we hit mid-October, we should have better final numbers for a tax levy resolution at the end of October. The 3 big things are third Friday count, equalized property values, and our state equalization aid. As a reminder, I thought I'd give just a little bit of context about state funding. Our revenue limit is set, that bucket is set really by 2 main things, our state equalization aid and our property taxes. The vast majority comes from those 2 places, and they pour into that bucket to make up the revenue limit. This slide illustrates a little bit more about what equalization aid is and how it impacts taxpayers. So if our equalization aid goes up, our taxes go down. If our taxes go up, our equalization aid goes down. So the revenue limit doesn't change. The equalization aid is really designed to give taxpayers some relief, which is why it's in play. And then for context, I also wanted to share this with the community. As far as an overall look at our state. So you can see the inflationary costs have been increasing, and our state aid has not kept up with inflationary costs. So if you can, we did get a $325 increase last year, but you can still see we're about $3,380 short per pupil of what inflationary costs are. So as a district, you can imagine what we would be doing if we had that amount of money coming in per student. Just thought it was good for the background of the community. A little bit of history as we continue to talk about 24-25. Our enrollment is looking good for this year. You can see it's the highest it's been in 2 years. However, enrollment increasing doesn't mean money increases. As far as our enrollment dollars, that will increase, but our declining enrollment goes away, so we don't receive any more money because we have more students. Our open enrollment continues to grow, and which is really something to celebrate. We have 104 kids enrolled, which is the highest we've ever had, and that's about 23% of our district. And then our open enrollment out is about 17%, makes up 17% of the population. However, just as a reminder to the community that when we surveyed the families that were leaving our district, they were mainly for reasons outside of our control. So for the 24-25 budget, you can see that Fund 10 expenditures look like they're going to be up this year. This is because of a few things. I'll talk about that in the next slide, but mostly for a staff member that's paid out of a grant that we received, some summer school money in addition to what we had not done that the year previous, so that was an addition last year, and some inflationary costs. We've had some minimal, as you can see, increases to our revenue. That's mostly made up from our Stronger Connections grant, which will total $120,000 this year. So very minimal increase in revenue. And today we are going to be asking, or I'm going to be asking, that there be a tax levy approved for $2,673,365, which is up about 1% or $27,000 from last year. So not that much of an increase. And then once again, our student population's up by about 16 kids this year. Some notable expenditure changes, just pointing out that there's a couple of years ago, we cut staff members and a bus. So we really cut some large expenses there. This year, we tightened up some things and saved about $77,000 by doing some audits, and we decreased cash in lieu. However, our increases also came in property taxes, increase in property insurance and workman's comp. And then there's a bucket where there was an increase in salaries. That new position was added. That new position is covered by the grant, though, and summer school. And then we had a larger Fund 10 to we will have a larger Fund 10 to 27 transfer. Mostly, we've moved our all of our EAs from being regular EAs into special ed aides. So then they are now covered under Fund 27 instead of coming out of Fund 10. And then there's also just inflationary costs increases. Some notable revenue changes. Our general fund levy is going to be up by about $30,000. I just said that. It's about 1%. Our debt service will decrease by about $3,000. Our equalization aid looks like it's going to be decreasing as well. Anticipated open enrollment numbers will be higher because we have more kids, but we also have an increase of $344 per student for open enrollment students. And then we have the Stronger Connections grant. That's a 2-year grant. This year it's $120,000. Next year it'll be $120,000 as well. That grant goes towards funding a position and summer school and then some curriculum. And then our revenue limit again is being raised by $325,000. That would be nice. $325, but we are losing $50,000 in declining enrollment.
On the declining enrollment exemption, obviously we increase this year. If we decrease next year, does that kick back in? Not that I want to see us decrease, but is it that volatile that if our enrollment goes down 10 kids next year?
Yeah, it's a 3-year rolling average.
Got it.
So
Wouldn't have an impact until 27, 28.
right. And there's a year that's coming off where we were really high next year.
Okay.
So that 3-year average helps stabilize things. Is there anything else, Mr. Stelmacher?
Yeah, that's the important part, that it's a 3-year average. So if we were going down over 3 years, we have the declining enrollment exemption that softens the loss, if you will, of revenues that we can get from state aid and taxes. And it gives districts time to readjust so you could reduce staff or try to reduce costs. The other side of the coin is if we now increase like we're doing, it's still a 3-year average, so that declining enrollment exemption that we had, I think it was 138,000, that is now going to shrink. So unfortunately, we don't, if we were really steady and then we had an increase, we'd have a little bit more money we could get from those two sources.
Understood.
I think that from a consultant standpoint, that system works pretty well because there aren't any shocks in one direction.
Nothing
Yeah.
sudden.
Yeah, that's what I was really trying to understand. Is it doesn't
Yeah.
is there that much volatility where it swings? Because that would make it even harder.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Tim.
Mention one more point, and that's the last bullet point. And the legislature, a year and a half ago, said, okay, we're going to raise per pupil aid $325,000. What they did differently this time versus in years past is they put it in the revenue limit versus if they kept it and had added it to $742 where it was, that would mean that all districts would get $325 for every student they could count as a resident student. If you put it in the revenue limit, I've seen districts that I've been assisting that it's wiped out by some other factors in the revenue limit. So it really wasn't an absolute 325, but it could be that they only got $100 per student based on the other factors of the revenue limit. And Yeah, if you listen to the legislators, I guess, I wish they would understand a little bit more how it works. I think they would maybe come up with a little bit better way to do it.
We all wish that. Okay, just again for context, some tax levy historical information. You can see over the last 10 years, we've stayed around we haven't gone over 2.6 million, or it's fluctuated a little bit. And again, this year we're going to be about 1% higher, but our mill rate is projected to go down. So tax levy and mill rates are directly connected to the equalized value of our district. Our values went down at some point, but as you can see, it's been unprecedented increases in the last few years. This year, we're estimating a 3% increase, and it will impact our state aid. The increase in property values result in a lower mill rate for homeowners, but they still may see an increase in taxes by about 1%. This is conservative as well. And so again, these numbers could change a little bit in October when we get the final numbers. And just for the community, as a reminder, how our mill rate is calculated, you take the total levy, which again is going to be about $2,673,365, and you divide that by our equalized property value, which we just talked about, multiply it by 1,000, and we get about $424 per $1,000. So a home of about $100,000 would be $424 in taxes. That's down from $4.33 last year, and from the previous in 21-22 it was $5.04, which is shown on this mill rate over time chart. So we are expecting to continue to lower our mill rate. That concludes the budget presentation on my side. I'm going to turn it back over to the chairperson for the resolution of the levy.
Okay, I call for a motion of the resolution presented for the 24-25 Silver Lake Salem Joint 1 tax levy.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion, move that there be levied a school tax assessed against all taxable property within the district in the sum of $2,673,365 necessary to operate and maintain the district school system and to finance the debt service of said system on the basis of the recommended budget for the 2024-25 school year.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Is there any discussion? If so, it is moved and seconded that the motion carry. All in favor, please vote with your cards. This one says Sioux counts, so I still count these.
It said it on every slide, but you kept
Oh,
counting.
it did? Oh, I-
You missed
Well, I'm just trying to help you out.
I was like, well, he's not
Hey.
following directions like all the kids don't.
8 ayes.
Okay, the ayes have it and the motion carries. I call for a motion of the resolution that the annual meeting be set for September 23rd, 2025.
Any member can make a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the fourth Tuesday in September, which is September 23rd, 2025 at 6 p.m. for our next annual meeting.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Any discussion? So moved and seconded that the motion carry. All in favor, please vote with your cards.
We have 8.
The ayes have it and the motion carries. This concludes the 2024 annual meeting. Thank you all for attending. through the meeting agenda. We're gonna skip Cletus Pledge of Allegiance. Open meetings compliance check.
Yes, it was completed last week. Sue sent out the open meetings.
Any questions on that, anybody?
Just out of curiosity, I know it's new, so just for color and clarity for those people in the audience, I mean, that's a new item to the agenda. What, when we say we're doing an open meetings compliance check, what does that mean?
It means that the board is checking to make sure it was posted in the appropriate time.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, you're good. I forgot to put a little picture on this one, but it's going away next month anyway. So,
The approval of the
yeah.
agenda
So-
sequence
so you just have, a motion has to be called to
to
approve the
approve,
agenda.
I will make a motion to approve the agenda as it's presented tonight.
Do we have a second?
I will second that motion.
Motion carries for the approval of the agenda sequence. At this point, we will open the meeting up to public comments. Please limit comments to no more than 3 minutes. Any public comments this evening? Okay, moving on. Approval of the consent agenda, approval of the monthly financials. And also approval of board minutes from August 27th, 24 and September 17th, 24. Do we have a motion to approve consent agenda as presented?
I will make a motion. We approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'm sorry, Joe. I will second that motion.
Motion carries. I'm sorry, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
I would like to thank Kim. Obviously, she answered a bunch of questions for me in regards to the financials, so I appreciate the clarity. I also want to thank you and say that I appreciate the amount of time you've been spending with Tim and having a conversation with him at our workshop last week. He was very complimentary on your desire to learn, and I'd say as a board member, it's been refreshing to see that you want to learn to understand, not just have these other folks here. So thank you for that effort and response to the questions.
I would second that.
Thank you.
Okay. Turn it over to Kim.
Okay, so just a few reports tonight. You see that I just want to call out that there's no board comments at the end. So feel free to ask questions as we go, because that's the way the flow is going to go. So just wanted to share with the board the back to school survey results. So this is the second year we've done a back to school survey. The survey results you can see are about the same. And there were a couple of comments. So two of the things that we're addressing for next year is most of the comments where people were a little less than satisfied revolved around our photography and the amount of people we had. We only had 2. We did ask for 3, and I did send an email to the boss or whoever at Life Stance to say that we would like 3 next year, because it really caused a lot of long lines for our parents. And then the other thing was that this is the second year in a row parents have commented about wanting more time or adjusted time. So we are making that adjustment for next year, either probably going to 3 hours, adding an hour or a half an hour on each end.
What is our current time?
It's 4 to 6.
4 to 6.
So we'll either do like a 3 to 6 or 4 to 7 to accommodate parents'
Work schedules.
work schedules and needs.
I don't want to get too into the weeds, but does anybody recollect how many photographers we had last year?
3.
There were 3,
Yeah.
but we just had 2 this year.
Yeah. So Crystal reached out and said, we should probably have 3. And their response was like, nope, 2 will do it. And then when I emailed them back, I said, actually, 2 didn't work. We're going to have 3.
Like I say, this is a little anecdotal, but the reason I question it is because last year when there was 3, we were,
Still long.
I think we were the last picture. My daughter Cooper was the last picture, and the photographer was way past done. I mean, wasn't having it. There was one picture, it was a unique, special picture of Cooper, and the photographer was like, nope, that's it, we're good, going home. She was done. So I wonder about adding a half hour to the end of it, from the photographer's standpoint.
Yeah, could
Have
be.
you looked at other photographers?
I think
This
that
is a new, so this is our second year with them, Life Touch. So we did have a different group which there was other problems. So this group on the back end, like as far as like printing codes and printing, I mean, they're so much better. I think really it's the picture night. And like even the 2 photographers that were there were like, this was not enough. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we told you. So I think that'll change because other than that, everything else they do like is much, much, much better. Yeah.
Okay, and then just giving the board an update on our strategic plan efforts. So we have continued to put things around the building, make it visible. Basically our whole newsletter to the community is around that. We did meet as an internal team with 3 teachers, our admin and Lori from Donovan Group to hash out our goals. So the metrics that we'll be bringing to the board in October, we still have some work to do around that. So we're looking at one around literacy, one around PBL, and then a goal around our values. And again, my hope is to bring it to the board in October to review and approve the goals for the school year.
Just to make sure I'm not a dummy, PBL is project-based
Learning. Yes, sorry. Thank you for clarifying.
That's okay.
that. Nope, there's probably a lot of people that don't
You guys
know
in
what it
this
is.
education and your acronyms.
I know.
And it makes me crazy.
It makes
You
me
guys don't
crazy
ever
too.
have conversations. You talk in acronyms.
Short
You know,
and
the
sweet.
funny part about that is that acronyms are supposed to be short and sweet, but the amount of time that gets spent explaining what they mean might be counterproductive.
Yeah, agreed.
Thanks, Kim.
There was, if you may remember at an earlier meeting, someone brought up the fuel cost associated with our transportation. So I've been looking into it for several months. Like everything that has to do with the budget, nothing is easy. And so I met with Dousman a few times. Then we met with the area district administrators. The long and the short of it is we are in a contract. We will save money if we go to mileage for fuel. We can't do it this year because of the contract. Our contract is not up this year, but I did talk to Dousman about being able to renew our contract early so we could get into a different clause. Of course, the caveat to that is, will we then experience a 15? That's the guy coming in for school perceptions, or it may be that I have to. Well, we'll see. The caveat is if Dousman says, well, the increases of transportation are 15 to 40%, it might not be worth getting out of the contract. So we'll deal with that in the spring when renegotiations come up with. Our contract is technically not ending this year. So I would have to ask for let's end it this year so that we can back out of the fuel consortium. But if that's going to increase our costs because we're backing out, it might not be worth it. Wanted to also give you a safety update. The board has a letter from the fire chief around his recommendations for us to remain with our current practices. And so we will keep that stable as we've been doing it for fire. We've done a lot around other safety policies and processes. Our staff engaged with 2 SROs around additional ALICE training this past week. Staff were given magnets to put on their doors that essentially, what is that thing called where the latch, where the door goes in to close, that hole, the magnet goes there to cover that hole so that they can keep their doors locked. So if I want to get in and out of a door, or Andrea or Angie want to get in and out of a door, we're not opening the door with our key. We can just open the door. If there would be a lockdown needed, they remove that magnet and the door's closed and locked. My concern was around our doors were not locked. And then if something would happen, now a teacher has to find their keys, has to do all of those things. So that kind of takes that away. We do have several doors in our building, of course, that frames are wooden. So Ron is going through the process of notching them out to have a larger metal plate that the door closes on, so we can put that in there. We just took over a a tub full of things to the community center in case, because that is where our reunification site is, that has all the materials in that we would need should we have to go to that site on an evacuation. We also received additional keys to that location, which is helpful. Instead of having a key just in the building, we have a key in the building, and then 2 of our administrators also have a key should we need it. I am probably tomorrow applying for a grant that would allow us funding to do some digital mapping. So I'm applying through that through the Department of Justice, DOJ tomorrow to have that happen. And I have been meeting with, I think I met with my 3rd company today around having a panic buttons utilized in the building. So panic buttons, if you recall from the Georgia incident that just happened, staff had lanyards around their neck. If they pressed the button a certain number of times, it alerted the whole school through their computers lockdown. So it came across all the screens, lockdown. All staff received text messages, and the authorities are alerted immediately. So I have been talking with, like I said, several companies. There's lots of different options. You can have the lanyard, you can have buttons, put into walls. You can have buttons on your phone. So there's different options. The lanyard option is probably my favorite because no matter where you are, there's a cost to them. But if I'm in the hallway and something happens, I can press the button. I don't have to go into a classroom, press the button. So I'm looking at those. That would not happen this year. Likely we don't have it in our budget, but it could happen for next year. And then all of our staff members also received window break mechanisms that are in their red bags. So I feel like every year we've really added layers to security. And so we talked with the staff. It's like almost like winter, when it's cold for winter, you dress in layers, right? The best thing to do, the way to keep us the safest is to have your doors locked. There's never been a fatality if the door is locked. So the other, because, the person doesn't want to try to get the door open. They want to just keep moving. The other thing we asked our staff to do is mark the corner in their room where you cannot see anybody. So if there was an intruder, we asked each staff member to put an X on the wall or on the floor in the space where their kids would go to, so that no one could see through the windows. There is, I think, a balance of being a school and not a prison, and also keeping us safe. So we're really trying to maintain that balance for kids. And when we sent out an email, Andrea sent out a nice email and really highlighted that schools still are the safest place for kids to be. So just like we practice fire drills and we practice tornado drills, they're very unlikely to happen, but we always want to be prepared. So,
you mentioned, and I don't know if it was just one of the companies you were looking at or multiples, the text message piece. That obviously scares me because I don't know anyone who gets consistent service depending on where you're at in the building. So I don't know if that's,
well,
is that just an added option?
It's an added option.
Okay.
So it would
That's
be
all computers. too,
yeah,
though,
it would be
as soon
all
as you do it.
computers,
Right, I
all
understand.
text. Like it, and what it does is it comes up on admin screen and it shows you right where the
where the
panic
alert,
button
where
is.
the alert came from.
Yeah, where the alert came from, and alerts the authorities. There was something else I was going to say. Oh, and in a few minutes, Julie's going to talk about, we also added a page to our website for parents to be able to access that tells a little bit more about what ALICE training is.
I don't want to take us too off the rails, but just kind of a little mild curiosity. When we do these drills with the students, what's the,
Temperature of the,
not so much the temperature, but what are we explaining to the students as to what the drill is regarding?
So there is a script that they follow. I mean, you take a serious tone with it. We also alert the parents ahead of time so that the parents understand that this is going to be happening. We want them to be serious about it, but also not induce
Like, are we
trauma.
informing students that we're doing active shooter drills?
we're lockdown drills. We don't usually say active shooter drills.
Lockdown.
We usually
Lockdown
just
drills.
say like an intruder or a reason we need to keep you safe. That's not fire or tornado. But when we walked to the community center and Angie and I were at the community center when the kids came there, and I felt we were pretty like straightforward about if you are asked by an adult that's safe, that says get out of this building as fast as you can, I want you to run here. So, you know, I never use the word active shooter with any of the age kids, but you know, we do talk about just something that's not safe, that we need to make sure that you are kept away from a person or anything else. But I mean, we're pretty blunt about you need to run here as fast as you can. We talk about you're not waiting for an adult and you're not waiting for your friend. And I know you're going to want to run home. And we did talk to the deputies about that. And kids who live, I mean, they're going to run home. And so I don't want to say you can't run home because the deputies pointed out that when they, you know, there is the reunification, they are going to find those kids. So I don't want to shame them for running home, but we always talk about this is where we're going to be and you're going to be safe. And so, I mean, pretty straightforward, but we don't use the shooter term. Yeah.
So obviously, as a board member without kids, I would like to say thank you. I mean, I know this is, you know, it doesn't hit as close to home for me, not being an educator, not having kids in the building, but it's frightening that we have to have these things. But, you know, again, thank you for being as vigilant and prepared with it. Because unfortunately, it's not a fun conversation. And again, I look at it like a tornado drill, a fire drill, right? Those are very unlikely to happen, but you still have to be prepared. And I think the steps we've taken over the last, 12 to 18 months have good conversation, good planning, and I just appreciate the effort from all of you guys. So.
Yeah, and I will say that the SROs have said more than once to us, we are ahead of the game. Like they were impressed that we had red bags. They were impressed that we had what we had in place as far as our safety plan. And so it's one of those things you have to keep up to date. And so that's why I started investigating the panic buttons, because that's the next step. And as we continue to look at possible referendums and safety being included in there, I think that's part of what we would want to research and
That's
look at.
something that would be included under an operational, I assume.
Well, depends on, yes.
I know, maybe we go dyslexic here, capital, I meant capital. This would
Yeah,
be under
yeah.
capital.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Okay. I wanted to also take some time to just talk to the board about the advanced learning initiative that we're doing. So in past years, our advanced learners, the people that have sort of worked with that programming, a lot of people call it gifted and talented. Have been stipend. This year, we asked Hannah Herman, one of our teachers, to do this work during the day. So instead of a stipend, she receives some time during the day to do that work. The leadership team came to her and wanted her to look at the continuum of services we can be offering our advanced learners. Advanced learners comes in all shapes and sizes, just like every kid. And there's 5 main areas: general intellectual ability, specific academic areas, creativity, leadership, and visual or performing arts. So we asked her to do some research. So she's researching, she's meeting with people, she's going to, there's conventions and stuff for it. We hooked her up with the person at DPI. The end goal is for her to come out with a program that outlines the continuum of services that Riverview offers for students that meet the qualifications of an advanced learner. It's similar to the continuum of special ed. It's just on the opposite side. We want to make sure that we are meeting all kids' needs, and kids that are sometimes we use tests, but some kids, let's say they score at the 98th percentile on something, we still need to be doing something for the kid that is at the 97th percentile or the 95th percentile, right? So looking at that as a continuum and not just a one size fits all. Any questions or thoughts on that? We'll bring that handbook to you all again in the spring. Hannah will present it, and then it would be a board approved handbook that would go on the website.
Yeah, and you talked about you guys will have a plan for identifying, and that'll all be
Yep.
part of that.
It's all about the identification. How does a kid get into advanced learning? Have those options, but also what is best practice in terms of that. And then the last thing before we get to our reading core presentation is just putting on our, we talked about this when we had our special board meeting, having a couple of extra dates where we had workshops available for the board. October 9th is the date that was selected unless the board cannot meet on that date for a copy of the survey for you to be able to review and provide any feedback. Schools' perceptions will be here in a little bit to talk about that. He might be on already. And then the December date is really to look at the results of those surveys.
Those dates,
December 12th. There.
Yeah, December 12th, sorry.
I missed 12.
those work for me, Kim.
They work for me as well.
Pretty
Okay.
sure they were.
I will add those to the board updates just so that you have it. And Patty, I will have Patty send out board calendar,
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Keep it as our normal times.
Let's go back. That last but not, well, not last, but I asked two people from our reading core program to come in and sort of speak about the work that they're doing with our district. So I'm going to have you introduce yourselves and just talk a little bit about what you do, who you guys are, and the results that we're seeing by having you here. So thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. And I'll let you introduce yourselves and talk to them a little bit.
Well, thank you for having us. Thank you, Superintendent Taylor, for inviting us and for you carving out time during your board meeting to, listen and learn a little bit about Reading Core, what it is we
Thank you so
do, and some of the impact we're having in the district. My name is Isa Galindo. I'm the Executive Director for Wisconsin Programming, and my colleague,
I'm Dee Sloan, I'm the Education Impact Manager for the state of Wisconsin, so I kind of oversee all the learning that's happening across the state.
So Reading Core started back in 2003, actually, in Minnesota, and was replicated here in Wisconsin back in 2015. So this is our 10th cohort, our 10th anniversary. And here in Silver Lake and Riverview, we began our partnership back in 2022. So 2 years under our belts now. And again, just thanking Ms. Taylor and some of the support staff that we have in the building to really support our tutors and really get us up and running in the past 2 years. We see that our tutors, when they are welcome, they acclimate to a school culture that's welcoming, that includes them in meetings and lockdown drills and everything, right, that happens in the school building. We see our tutors coming back year after year. They can serve up to 4 years with Reading Core. We are an AmeriCorps program, and so we have that people power from the community, folks from anywhere from 17 years old to 88 years old, you've had tutors that want to come back, part of the community, and they want to give back to the community. They want to work with kiddos. They want to be a change agent and support kiddos. And so we try to welcome as many people as possible through our AmeriCorps program. But you might be asking, how do these folks then get to tutor kids when they don't have that background? And so we hire, we recruit the folks, we background check them, and we train them. We have quite a robust training system that combines synchronous, asynchronous, and in-person training for our tutors, where we give them the tools and knowledge in reading interventions, our 10 evidence-based reading interventions that we use, and that is in your folder. There's a handout with those 10 interventions, and Dee Dee will run through those in a little bit. So they have to learn all those 10 interventions. They learn our assessment. We use FastBridge as our benchmark and our progress monitoring tool. And so they have to master all of that. They have about 30 days to master those tools and assessments. Dee Dee and our coaches, who are part of our Reading Core team, then have to support our tutors by passing an aura that we call, it's kind of a calibration test to ensure that they have mastered that content and then able to deliver our high dosage tutoring program. So once after all that has happened with our tutor, the hiring, the training, our ongoing coaching, we know that one day of training isn't good enough. It has to be ongoing, and that's part of our secret sauce. Dee Dee and her team of coaches are coming into your building every single month to meet with the tutor, to have data dives. Once that progress monitoring check is happening on a regular basis, we take 1 minute away from the student's tutoring time to be able to progress monitor, to be able to have consistent check-ins to see how that kiddo is doing. Are they improving? Are they staying the same? Are they decreasing in their growth and performance? And those meetings allow folks from our team and the school staff person that's represented in that team to have conversations around that data. We make decisions based on how those kiddos are doing, based on progress monitoring, and really try to triangulate as well any data pieces that the school is bringing forth in those meetings to make sure we have a very comprehensive approach to address the needs of the students in our roster. So once that training is happening, once they pass their aura, they continue to have support from Dee Dee and the coaches, but then they get to start working with the kiddos. And I want to say thank you to the Riverview staff who really support us. You know, we usually partner up with someone that knows the school schedule, knows the teachers, knows a little bit about the reading and literacy program in the building to be able to help us build our roster and our schedule, where we pull kids every single day for 20 minutes, and that's why it's called high dosage. We know that that is a key factor in making tutoring work, is to ensure that it's consistent, it's regular, and we are really lucky because we have that tutor, that AmeriCorps tutor that's coming in and providing not only that intervention, but a little bit of relationship and rapport building with that kiddo that really allows them to flourish. And so we'll jump into the data in a sec. But we have also been part of quite a few, 2 randomized control trials from a third party. In the past, we partnered with the University of Chicago and ORC to do a randomized control trial. And they found that the program can be replicated with ease because of all these systems and procedures we have in place, because of our ongoing coaching. And we saw that our kiddos are performing, they are exceeding. Our kindergarten and first grade students did the best. They're growing a year's worth in just 1 semester. And so we're really proud of those outcomes for our kiddos. And we all know, and I'm preaching to the choir, we know that the sooner we get them into interventions, the better. And so we're really excited to see some of those same results in your own data that we'll take a look at in a sec. But as far as actual kind of the programming every single day, we have abilities to hire full-time or part-time tutor. Our full-time tutors can work with a minimum of 20 students per day, and our part-time works with a minimum of 15. So quite a few kiddos for that tutor. And again, there's a whole process to get them into the tutoring and things like that. But once it gets going, it's pretty automatic, pretty independent for that tutor to support the kiddo. But like I said, we really rely on the data and the numbers during that monthly meeting to take a deeper dive into really looking into that particular child, making sure that interventions fit that child's need, and we're differentiating to make sure that we're supporting that kiddo get through the finish line. Our program is intended to work mostly with tier 2 students, but we welcome any kiddo that needs a program. We've worked with kiddos with IEPs, kiddos with dyslexia, language learners, and we're finding that they're really successful across the board with our programming. IEPs are a legal document, and so we make sure that that's something that the school is authorizing, that we align with the goals in the IEP, and that we're not the only service for that particular student. It's kind of an add-on or kind of, double services, just because we want to avoid any legal issues with that. But that is something we partner with the school to make sure that we're hitting those marks. I'm going to stop there. I know I did a lot of talking. Any initial questions before we dive into the data piece for your site?
No.
Okay. So if we want to turn to this report here, this is a system that we call RCDMS. And so I mentioned earlier, our tutors are compiling progress monitoring checks. So they take 1 minute out of the week with that particular student. They do it with all the kiddos in their cohort, and we're able to compile and synthesize some of that data into this report. This is a site report, and it summarizes the past 2 years of service here at Riverview. And so we can see that 66 students were tutored in total in the past 2 years. And I really want to highlight 2 percentage points here, the 68.8 and the 70. And so this is telling us, ideally, we are servicing kids with 100 tutoring minutes per week. That's kind of our, North Star. And so the closest we can get to that 100 minutes, we see the better outcomes. And there's a direct correlation between the average number of minutes that a kiddo is receiving tutoring with their growth. And so we're really excited and again, very thankful to Riverview because you're very close to that 100. We usually see 60-ish statewide. We're in 185 schools and the average is about 65%. So you're above the mark there. And again, thank you for all that support because that ensures that we are delivering that program even more, right? That consistency and time really makes a difference. Out of those 66 students, almost 69% of them, or 44 of them, are exceeding target growth. And so there's different benchmarks that we have for fall, winter, spring, very similar to what schools follow. And so we base it on those numbers and the outcomes that we see. Well, your kiddos are doing really, really well. Over half of them meeting and exceeding targets and really setting them in that trajectory to proficiency that we know is essential for our kiddos at 3rd grade by the end of 3rd grade. In the second page, you'll see a graph and a little bit more of that information just broken down. And so these are compiled after a child has 6 of those progress monitoring checks with the tutor. The tutor uploads it to the data dashboard. And we can see here some really impressive numbers. Again, kindergarten and 1st grade, well above half of those kiddos doing really well and meeting those expectations. I'll let Didi explain the little dips in 1st and 2nd grade here, but then I also want to really celebrate 3rd grade. This is exceptional. I think one of the highest scores and outcomes in the state, again, 100 across 185 other schools. And I personally really want to make sure that our 3rd graders in the program are doing a good job because that's the last year they get to get services with us. Once they hit 4th grade, they're just not eligible to work with us anymore. And so when I see a percentage like that, it's just, it ensures and it reiterates, right? It reinforces that we're doing something well and just setting those kiddos up for success as they move out of 3rd grade. Any questions about this data handout?
Very well.
One additional thing I'll say before I hand it over to Didi to explain 1st and 2nd grade. The first year of partnership, so 22-23, we had 2 tutors here. They did really well. Sometimes we see tutors come back. Sometimes we see, some turnover like any other workforce area. But this past year, so that was 1st year. 2nd year, 23-24, we had 1 tutor place. We did struggle a little bit with finding a tutor full-time to stay the entire year. And so we're working to make sure that we find folks that are successful in that state, right, for at least 1 complete service year. Not only because we know that works the best for the students and the school, but then because also the tutor gets additional benefits from AmeriCorps. One thing to celebrate, again, thanks to the support of the school, to Superintendent Taylor, to even safety measures like the ones you spoke about earlier. Our tutor from last year is returning, and so she is here again this year, and that means that they can get up and running even quicker. They can get to the students. They don't have to go through all of our training because they had it last year. They still go through the calibration to ensure that they're going to be able to deliver the program with fidelity and how it's intended. But we can get started so much quicker and really hit the ground running with someone that has experience. So thank you for that support and welcoming our tutor because I think that really makes a difference. And hopefully she comes back for a 3rd year and continue the success.
So the reasoning behind the kind of lower growth for 1st grade is that's the CDMR portion of 1st grade, and we start testing that in January with our lower performing students. So that number tends to be a little bit less favorable looking than some of the other numbers, because they're just turning into readers at that time of year. We don't even start progress monitoring them for CPMR until after January. And then the second grade number is kind of a.
Do you guys know what CBMR is?
Nope.
Okay.
Oh,
That's why I don't think they know what that is.
I was gonna ask.
I knew, I was like, Mike
So-
doesn't
I was
know.
waiting
Um,
for applause.
so-
No, Mike's gonna ask. You know that,
Our
Angie.
kindergartners get tested on letter sound fluency. First graders get nonsense word fluency in the beginning of the year, and then CBMR, which is a curriculum-based measure for reading. So they're actually reading passages. And so that's again a
Fluent, they
timed
read.
1 minute fluency check.
Got it.
And that's a big jump from decoding a single word to then having to read full sentences and full passages. It's a big jump for a 5-year-old. And so that's why, or 6-year-old, that's why we see sometimes that slight decrease in performance.
And the second grade, to be a full disclosure, is kind of a phenomenon across the country. We thought it was a thing here in the States, so we have been addressing it all year. So, coaching my coaches on, really pay attention to what's happening in second grade, find out, if they're in the right interventions, if they're getting the right amount of tutoring, if their minutes are up, if their minutes are good. We were really focusing on it here. And then we went to a national meeting and we found out second grade, for some reason, last year was very low across the nation. So we don't know if it's like that, those tail end COVID, kiddos that were in K4 at that time and really just starting to learn their letter sounds and all of those things. This is just some theories that we've come up with. But for some reason, it is a phenomenon across the country for second graders not making the progress that we're seeing in the other grades. So hopefully we can shore them up for this year when they're in third grade and really try to, remediate whatever factor is going on with those second graders to, bring them up to speed before they're no longer eligible, at least for our program. So there'll be a really big area of focus for us this year. I also want to say thank you all for, welcoming our coaches in, for, being a site that somebody does want to return to, right? And that also helps train our new tutor that was also placed here. She has someone to kind of shadow and kind of follow in the footsteps of. And, shout out to Marlene, who is our internal coach here in the building. She's doing a phenomenal job.
Yep.
Getting us schedules, getting us kiddos to test and to work with. And then our coaches, our external coach, Shelly, she's been assigned to you. You had Marisol, I think, last year. Coming into your building, helping you out, giving you the guidance. Another, big point of something to note is that our tutors, because they're not certified, all of our interventions are scripted. So they don't have to come up with lesson plans or anything. Everything is scripted for them so that once they learn how to do it, you're just delivering those same things with different letters or different reading probes every day. So it's very easy to get them up and trained so that they can do those things. And then they're not allowed to make any of the decisions. So those decisions are made by Marlene and Shelly when she comes in, what interventions they should be placed in. Again, if we're looking at some of the data, if they're not making progress, what can we do to change that? What is our data showing? What is school-wide data showing? So that we can hopefully make some changes and help that student succeed. As well as if a student is just really taking off in the intervention they are, should we bump that intervention up a little bit to give them a little bit more of a challenge to get them through to that finish line so they can successfully exit, and then we can bring another student into that spot.
So you just mentioned Marlene. Is this part of the MLSS? Is that how they're identified to be part of the Reading Core program? Or, how are students selected for it?
So they can't technically be part of it because they're a separate, but what we do is, yes, we test, and typically our kids that are tier 2, we would consider tier 2, that would typically be in the classroom, getting interventions from teachers. They're getting that, but then they're getting above and beyond with the tutors also. So yeah, typically it's kids that Marlene is not working with that we would still like to see move ahead. And it's been great. You guys always are even keeping me in the loop. I'll go with Marlene when they meet just to talk about how have we done, how are we doing. yeah, it's awesome. And we are very lucky to have Natalie Butler coming back, and then Mary Acklam, who's actually a relative of some of our students, is our second tutor. So
Oh, very cool.
it's nice. It's people that feel grounded at Riverview. So
I would also like to share, kind of to wrap things up, is that our program aligns really well with Act 20. So two things that I want to share and highlight there is that one, all of our coaches, Dee Dee and all her coaches, are getting letters trained. And so we know it's not a requirement for us. We don't have to have that we're not part of that mandate, but I know that it's important for us to make sure that our literacy experts are up to date with best practices and what's happening through our states, and making sure that we align with the mandate. And also, I didn't include it today, but we have printouts, student graphs that we can print out that are easily shared with parents, easily shared with teachers, and that really align to that personalized reading plan that has to be developed for the bottom 25% of kiddos after that screener is completed, starting this year. And so we're really excited to be able to continue support schools across the state and Riverview that align with some of the expectations that are coming down from the state.
Any questions?
No, I just would say thank you. Obviously, sounds like you guys are lending a great service and providing good quality tutoring for our students, and it's appreciated. So, and happy to hear that, not that it's a surprise, but that our staff and team are very welcoming. So this reinforces what we already know. So thank you, ladies.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for coming
Thank
in
you.
and taking your time tonight. I know you had to sit through some things, so thank you very much.
And it's important things. We share these type of things with our tutors. Again, that's why they come back. They feel safe, they feel welcomed. And so thank you for making this school a home for them. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
thank you.
I would like the board to consider, and Julie to consider, having Bill Foster from School Perceptions swapping with Julie.
Is he on right now?
He is on right now. And so is that fine?
You're not going anywhere, are you?
Thank you. Be safe. Drive home safe. So we just need a motion to make that change.
I would make a motion that we move to 8A, discussion and possible action on the community survey, and welcome Mr. Foster from School Perceptions.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, let
Motion
me see if
carries.
I can figure this out now. Now I have to unmute myself. Hold on. Okay. Let me bring him back over. And I'll unmute myself. Okay, Bill, are you there?
I am.
I'm sorry. Well, I mean, I tried to tell you ahead of time. I wasn't exactly sure, but
No worries.
okay, so I'm just gonna bring you over. Hold on, I gotta figure out how to do this right now. Okay, hold on. Oh, that's not the right one.
Both of my eyes.
There is this.
Dust.
Okay.
Oh, we had him. There
There it is.
he is.
Okay, Bill, so you can see the board a little bit. You can't see me, but you can see the board.
There's not much to look at. You're all right.
Yeah.
I think he's got Angie.
You can
And
say
I think he's got
us.
the three ladies. So he's
Oh, actually, you probably have the best.
So,
view
Bill,
of
you're
this.
winning.
Yeah,
You're
in
good.
shape.
no. Don't ugly up. Oh, there you go. Stop. Perfect stop, Kim. It's a perfect stop. You still got the three ladies and Joe.
So, Bill, thanks,
But I'm
and
just the man behind the.
I appreciate your patience. The board asked that you come in just to talk a little bit more about the school's perceptions work that you do and the survey that we are going to be working on to send out to the community.
Perfect. Well, what I did tonight, I put together a very short presentation I'm going to attempt to share here. Let's see here.
It's the same thing. Whatever.
Let's see.
Everybody goes through it.
No wonder you get along so well with him, Kim.
Does that look right?
Real fun.
Yeah.
We got you, Bill.
All right. So this will be quick, but I just wanted to kind of do this a little bit systematically. So again, I'm Bill Foster. I started School Perceptions back in 2002, so more than 20 years ago. And a couple other people that'll be working on your project this year. Rob is our Vice President of Research. He's a great guy. He actually received his PhD from Madison, specifically studying referendums in small school districts in Wisconsin. why people vote yes, why they vote no, why they change their mind, things like that. So he's a great resource for us. Carrie will help with the survey administration and emailing of the survey. And then, well, actually, I've got, that's actually Scott, not Darren. Scott's gonna, we moved Darren, Darren's on our team as well, but Scott's gonna be a little more present on your project. His background is as a journalist, so he's a very, very good writer. So you'll probably see his face as well. So we've been around, again, for more than 20 years. We have worked in all 50 states. We do about half of our business. We do staff, student, and parent surveys. And then now we've done over 1,000 community surveys. That's really what we're here to talk about tonight. Help school districts navigate not only the referendum planning process, but also strategic planning and really giving your taxpayers a voice in this process in terms of what their priorities are and what they think you should be doing. As it relates to referendums, at the end of the day, referendum has to reflect what the majority of your community wants, otherwise it won't be successful. So we've got to give them a voice and listen to that data. So why do you do a community survey? Number one is really to educate. So your first notion is, well, we want data. Well, you do, but you want to educate because you have to tell your story, explain what's going on, explain what your challenges are, explain your aging buildings and the fact that you've got some needs that you can't pay for out of your normal operating budget. So one superintendent once said, this is like designing an interactive newsletter. And I thought that was kind of a good way to describe it. It's got some background information, then it asks a question. And it gets more background information, then we get some more direction. So obviously you're doing the survey to gather data. At the end of the day, everybody wants to know not only what are you going to do, but how much is it going to cost me? And then we also collect some overall satisfaction metrics. Referendum support does highly correlate with people's satisfaction. If they've got a bee in their bonnet and they're not happy about something that's going on at the district, we need to understand that because they're not happy. So we're going to ask those questions as well. At the end of the day, people are more likely to support a plan if they understand it, again, through education and have a voice in creating it. That's why we do the survey. More than 20 years ago, people that did this work would do what's called a random stratified sampling. So you would magically pick out 400 people in the community and you might call them. And then you would extrapolate that data and say, this is representative of the entire community. And we did about 2 of those. We said, well, this doesn't make any sense. And even back then, more than 20 years ago, if you didn't recognize the number that was calling, you probably wouldn't pick it up. So we don't do any of that. We do what we call an inclusive process. So everybody in your community will have a chance to take the survey once, but only once. So we have controls to do that. We do that through really a old-fashioned mailing paper and pencil survey. So it's mailed to every household in the district. People can take it online. So we do build our own software. We've been doing that for more than 20 years. So it's very, very secure. And the majority of the people will take it online. But if you want to have a cup of coffee, you want to fill it out the old-fashioned way, there is a business reply envelope provided, and they can mail it back to School Perceptions, and then we will enter that data and include that in your final report. The districts will often say, can you just send us a survey so we can see what it looks like? And we could literally send you 1,000 examples, and not one of them are the same because every school district is in a little, a lot of them are similar challenges, but at the end of the day, your project is going to be different than everybody else's. So you need to tell your story. Again, survey administration is done online. We encourage people to do it online because it saves money. There's no postage or anything. Most people do it that way, and they can take it paper and pencil, and we do make accommodations if you need for a different language. Our software actually supports, I don't even know how many, more than 80 different languages now, so we can make accommodations. Typically, that isn't a big need, but we want to make sure everyone can take the survey if they need to. The survey, again, think of it as an opening letter, or think of it as an interactive newsletter. The opening letter is, this happens to be Holmen. I just grabbed that as an example, but it tells your story. Holmen, they've got a lot to be proud of, performing at a high level as is your district. I read a little bit of your background. You've got a high performing district. And then they go on to say they're looking for some Indy. So that's Holman's story. Yours would be different. When you do a survey, you always look at some demographic data, and we will help you with that. We want to make sure our seniors are well represented. We want to make sure they are a resident of the district, because if they don't live there, they can't vote. We might break it out by municipality. We look at our employees as a subgroup and parents as a subgroup, and maybe ask a question around communications. Again, back to that interactive newsletter example. I think this one happens to be, I think it was Cedarburg. But in any event, maybe your story is that you're growing, or maybe your story is that your buildings are aging, or whatever it is, but you want to present that in both text as well as some images. You also need to explain your financial situation and what your mill rate's doing, what your debt level's doing. If you don't have any debt, whatever that information is, that needs to be integrated into the survey, as well as the building project. So I just grabbed this one. This one happened to have some heavy renovations and some new construction. So at a high level, you don't need to show people where the windows and doors and hallways are all going to be, but at a high level, what parts of the building would be touched, or what's being proposed in the study. Then at the end of the day, you got to total it up and say everything that we want to do is going to cost, in this case, $73 million. And you ask the question. Now, I know it's not going to be $73 million, but it was in Cedarburg. We test that, and then we explain what the corresponding property tax mill rate impact would be. Another approach, and I don't think we're going to do this, but I put this in as an example, might be to test people's tax tolerance. I think I saw in one, you're at 5, 6, or 7 million. Do we want to do that, or do we want to say, we looked at everything and we're proposing a plan that would cost 6.2 million? Or again, we'll work with you to come up with that strategy if we don't do a tax tolerance question like this. So at the end of the day, we have done more than 1,000 community surveys. It is predictive data. It's not perfect. I think we're at 94% in terms of being able to predict the outcome in Wisconsin. However, that's not to say, in some cases, districts move forward with a plan that there wasn't support for, and if they fail, we call that our data was predictive. So it might not be what you want to hear, but it is generally very predictive data. I do understand there's some concern that depending on what's going on with other districts in your that are also taxing the same people, that's a factor, and we have to look at that and keep that in mind as we rate the survey. I did put the timeline. I think you saw this last week, but I put it in again, or at least maybe you saw the high levels of this. But so we're at September 23rd tonight. We actually have started kind of going through all your slide deck, all your materials that have been provided to date. So we're working on that. We'll schedule a meeting with your core team to kind of confirm what we call the survey framework or survey strategy. We'll have a couple more meetings. Then really a goal to come back to the board on October 9th to say, here's what we're proposing. We're not going to, it'd be great if we hit it right on the nose, but we suspect maybe there's a few things that need to be tweaked. So we gave ourselves another week, and with the goal to finalize on the 15th. Then it takes usually 2 or 3 weeks to print and mail. The survey is bulk mailed, so we don't control the U.S. Post Office. We've learned that the hard way. But the other thing we have to keep in mind this fall is there is a another event going on, the presidential election. So there's gonna be a lot of mailing hitting.
Yeah.
So we intentionally said, let's have this mailing hit right after the election's over. Because people will be so used to throwing stuff away probably by in the month of October. So this goal is to have this land in mailboxes after the election on November, after that Tuesday, so we'll land it on Thursday. It also is emailed out to the staff prior to landing in mailboxes. The reason we do that is the staff is really the front line of communication. They're very important. If they've got any questions about what's being proposed, if a parent asks, or if a friend or neighbor says, what's going on here, we want the staff to be up to speed, and that's why we send it out to the staff prior to it landing in mailboxes. We will email it to parents, and then we've got a survey deadline of November 25th, which I think is the Monday before Thanksgiving, and that'll give us time to enter all the data and be prepared to come back on December 12th to say, here's what the survey said with the board, and then the board will need to decide, do we have support, don't we have support, or do we have to modify it in the month of December? And then you are required, I think this year the date is January 21st or 20th. You have to have your resolution approved by then, and if you want to have it on the ballot in April. There is one other important note, there is not a regularly scheduled election in the fall next year. So in November of 2025, there is no election, therefore you cannot have a referendum in the fall. You can only have a referendum question go to vote in the spring of 2025 in Wisconsin, and you can't have a special. So that's why we have really this timeline. So let me pause and answer questions on our process, or
What's the, when can you do the August timeline for a vote? Go to vote
Pardon
in
me?
August?
for August.
Yeah, it hasn't been in the past, like, is it every other year or something for August?
If there's a primary, if it's a regularly scheduled primary, you can, but there wouldn't be a primary in August next year. So we just have the gubernatorial in 2 years, and then of course the presidential again in 4 years.
Is it a big concern that Wilmot's talking about going now in the spring?
I mean, I think that's got to be part of the questions, right?
Well, so I talked to Bill about that. I think did I put it in the board update?
In
Yeah.
the update, yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about that along with Doreen, and I can let you speak to it, Bill, or if you want me to.
Yeah, it's a legitimate concern, but at the end of the day, you don't control Wilmot, what they're gonna ask for, what they're gonna do, and you never will. So it is a factor, and it's a legitimate concern, but you can't wait because you don't know if they're gonna be successful, if they're gonna fail. The challenge for a resident is if we were to put a survey out, they don't know what Wilmot's going to do yet. So when they take the survey, they're going to respond with the information that they have, and that's really all you can do. But you can't, you just can't wait for them either. So I think you've got to go out and say, this is what our district needs, and this is what we've done, and ask the question. We did work with Wilmot on their last project, and they actually went out for something that we didn't test. So, and there was a little bit of a lesson learned there. I think that was for, I believe, an operational, and they ended up sequencing it, and that gets confusing for people. In any event, I think they probably will be going out again, but I don't think there's anything you can do to, you've got your own needs that aren't going away. Your building's not going to get any younger. So I think you've got to tell your story and ask the question.
So, in your opinion, would it benefit us at all to include in our survey? Would it be impactful to our community members if Wilmot went forward, or is that moot for what we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think if you know exactly what they're proposing, then you could share that as an informational, but I don't know if they know exactly what they're gonna be doing yet. And then if they change, and I don't know if they'd be comfortable saying, we know for sure until their resolution has been written and voted on. And so we would need to know what they're gonna be doing in the next, 3 weeks in order to get it into your survey.
So Bill, you showed a slide there that had, tax tolerance versus exact. Is there a benefit to asking the community one way or the other? I mean, you guys said you've done 1,000 of these surveys. Is there one that you found has better results, or is it best to say, to your point, that we're looking at 6.35 million? What's your tolerance? Because I mean, is that a yes or no question, or how is that phrased, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. And my personal belief after doing a lot of these is, let's call him Joe Sixpack, the average guy out there, says, what do you want?
Like Joe
And how much is
12
it going to cost me? And I'll tell you, yes or no. But if you make them think and say, well, here's all our problems, and if you do a tax tolerance, then you kind of have to do what are your priorities, which is more complicated. Then how much money would you give us? Then you have to back into a plan based on that approach. That works, or sometimes districts will do that if the board can't agree. And if you haven't done your work and you say, well, we're just not sure. We just can't agree. We're gonna let the whole community decide. And many districts end up going down that road. But I'm a fan of saying, we've done a thorough analysis. We've looked under every rock. This is what we really need, 6.2 million, and here's exactly how we're going to spend that money. And it's going to cost you $50 or whatever it's going to cost you. That'll give you really, really good data. And I think that's the easiest answer for Sixpack to say yes or no to.
Understood.
So I'm a fan of that, but some districts just can't get there.
The other question I had is, obviously we had done a self-run community survey at the beginning of the year. What kind of percentage of respondents do you guys need or get usually to feel like you are able to get that predictive answer for us? And again, we did it ourselves, just kind of sent out some flyers, postcards, I think it was, and we had a couple hundred responses. Obviously, I would assume we need more than that if we're going to go ask the community for 600 or 6 million, not 600 million. We get shot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The answer is two things. One is the typical response rate is 20%. Right now, we actually just bumped up to 21. To me, it's funny, during COVID, we were actually up at 23, 24 because people were so bored that they were happy to take the survey. But it's dropped down a little bit again. But the statistical answer to your question is when you get to 400 people,
okay,
then you've got a fairly good confidence in the data. And actually, if you go from 400 to 4,000, what you'll see is the data won't change by more than 1%. So it really locks down statistics.
all right.
So 400 would be a benchmark that we would want to get at to have a supreme level of confidence.
People, yeah.
So I'm going to, again, obviously I support this and just spitballing questions as they come to me. Because we have such an engaged staff and, staff members' family, does that cloud the survey?
That's a great question.
Knowing that we have 50 to 60 truly engaged households, because I look at our strategic planning sessions. While we had 80 to 90 people there, if you really break it down and look at how many people were families of staff, family members of staff, full families, Lucas Wojciewicz was the most popular kid at all of our things. But, what does that impact if there is one?
Yeah, and the answer is, so we take that into account, and so we look at 3 mutually exclusive subgroups, the first being staff. The staff is arguably the most important, because if they're not on board with what you're proposing, you're dead in the water, right? Because they're talking to everybody every day. But they represent less than 1% of your community. So we look at it, and then we remove it. And then what we do is we look at the parents as a subgroup as well. They are They, with the K district, represent about 20% of your community probably. We'll check. The vast majority of your voters don't work at your district and don't have kids at your district. So we create a weighted average based on that assumption, and then produce our predictions based on that weighted average assumption. So they're all important for different reasons, but so it's a great question. You'll be skewed. Your data will be overrepresented with staff and parents, and underrepresented with non-parent, non-staff, but we adjust for that in our analysis.
Awesome. I think it's one of those things where I view it as a blessing and a curse, because we have such a great staff and they're so invested in the building and the success of it that it's great. But at the same time, we know, I mean, at least I feel like we know that they're going to be in favor of doing things that are going to better the building, the school, the community, the kids' learning experience. So,
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they only get one vote.
And I was just going to say, is it one survey per household? That was the last question I had.
Yeah, it's one survey per household, but we do make accommodations that if there is another adult in your household, you can request an additional survey. So when these get printed, we typically will drop usually 100 surveys, extra 100 surveys at the district office. People have to call, request it. We've landed on that as being the best method to be inclusive, yet you can't get 50 surveys because you're really passionate one way or another. So we make accommodations so everybody can, but it's one mailed per household.
Anybody else got any other questions?
So the last question I have might be for you, Kim. Obviously, I'm in full support of it. Just for full disclosure, what's the cost on this? Roughly?
Yeah, it's about 10,000.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I have no other questions.
Do we have a motion to approve sending out a community survey in connection to capital referendum needs?
So since I was the most vocal and asked so many questions, I'll make the motion that we approve the community survey through school perceptions.
I will second. Sorry, Joe. I will second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion to approve sending out a community survey in connection to capital referendum needs is approved.
Great, we'll get to work.
Thanks,
you, Bill.
Bill.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch. I'm at WASDA this week, but then, are you there?
Actually, Scott and Rob will both be there. I will not be there.
Okay.
You'll see them.
I'll drop in and then we'll talk next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Bye-bye. Just leave call and call for everyone. There we go. Okay, thank you for listening and asking the questions. I think it's going to be worthwhile for us to really understand what our community wants.
Well, and I think if we can get to that 400 mark, which is maybe a little lofty, but if we do a better job of pushing it out.
So I don't think, I mean, we got close to 200
Yeah.
when we just did a generic survey ourselves,
Yep.
right? I mean, and I don't, again,
These guys have to be better at
I
pushing
would,
it out.
yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm being negative to what we did, because a lot of work went into that, but this is their job every day, right? So I would think they know what
Yeah.
buttons to push to get us to 400.
Yeah.
I would hope.
And I would think people might be more motivated because we did fail a referendum, so people might be more motivated to now take the survey to help inform us. So, thank you, Julie, for waiting. I asked Julie do a little bit of a technology update and get us squared away with where we're at with CompuNet and other things.
We have had a very, I want to say for the most part, seamless transition from K-12 to CompuNet. We've had our growing pains, and they're still there, but as far as the infrastructure goes, I think that everything has progressed very smoothly. Our computers were imaged and teachers were working on them come first day of class. Our Chromebooks are working. The APs are very, very good that are in the classrooms. We haven't had any network issues. The only thing that we did find is we have a couple of dead spots.
You got, again, AP.
Access points. Come on, Mike.
That was at a school.
No, but I think I knew that one, but
I mean,
all initials. If you haven't learned anything from me in 9 years on the board, you've only known me for 2. Stop with the dang initials.
So we did find a few dead spots. One was actually in the office, in the main office. We did put an extra access point in there.
Thank you, Mrs. Strasser.
And the other two spots are actually, there's like a little hallway down by the first and second grade that Holly Stengel is in and.
Yeah,
Colorado
that's
Speech
my
College
thing.
is. Yep, and there's like no signal down there. These lovely cinder block walls really played
Yeah, to
havoc on
block it
our.
out. Yeah. So, but these are in addition to the ones that we added.
Yes.
But it was
Yes.
just the two.
Yes, well, it would actually be three, and then there's.
Oh, yeah,
the-
three
Where,
would go.
actually, where, our AmeriCorps, our reading court offices, they also don't have very good signal down there. And, I mean, it makes sense because they've taken the access points that were in the hallway and moved them into the classrooms, so.
They're not
They're
traveling
really
as
not
far.
getting-
Yeah, they're blocked in the classrooms.
So we're gonna look at just getting a couple extra access points. We have the ports for them, so it's not gonna be any cost on the switches. But as far as the switches, the network itself, I would have to say is everything has been running very smoothly with the transition.
Excellent.
Again, you know,
Always
we've had some
technology.
growing pains with, you know, staff and the ticketing process, but it's smoothing out, it's getting there, and we're only a couple weeks in, so I'm actually very hopeful that it continues to work in that direction.
Very good.
One of the things that we've noticed is that our phone, and you guys probably got the alert that the phone system has been acting out. We're not sure if it is a spectrum-related issue or if it's an Avaya issue. Problem is that our service contract with Avaya ended in 2022, so we're no longer under contract with them. And on top of that, the phones are pretty much end of life. So that's something that we're gonna have to look at moving forward, is how we want to proceed with our phone system.
Is this building-wide phone system?
That's voice over IP is how those are set up.
Actually, no, we're not, it's not voice over IP. It's digital, but I'm not sure exactly what, it's not like the old analog, but it's not voice over IP either. It's kind of like a combo. And the phone systems, for some reason, are not holding calls when you call out. They're dropping the calls. And it's random. It doesn't matter if it's, you know, one side of the building, another side of the building, all of a sudden somebody's on the phone and you just drop your call.
That sounds like a VoIP problem, doesn't it?
That's why I asked if it was voice
Yeah,
over.
that sounds like a VoIP
Yeah, but
problem.
it's not. It's really,
Interesting.
I can't remember what it's called. I can't remember.
Oh,
It's not an interconnected system, is it?
Come on, Kim.
do I remember? Sue would remember, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
remember.
I wasn't a part of that whole phone system when they set it up, so
I'm not an expert, but my understanding was if it was an interconnected phone system, it does not use VoIP. But how old are they? Well, how old is it?
2012, or wait, 2015, when we did the Nexus project.
Right.
So
They
it's
should
very,
have been VoIP.
I would have thought they would have been voice over IP
they're
in
not.
2015.
And the only reason that I even know that they're not is because we had asked about going to,
Dave and Jim on the board with tech nerds in
having our
2015.
voicemail sent to our emails, and they said they couldn't because it wasn't voice over IP. So
Interesting.
that's the only
Because they,
reason I know
because
that.
they
Kim,
can't
that's part of
transfer the data from one line to
The
the
project,
next.
that's right. Phones and.
It is not, but Julie and Amber we meet with them once a week, CompuNet, and we are going to get it quoted out.
And I apologize if you guys didn't hear my question,
Oh.
Kim, off the side is that part of our capital improvement list?
It
as
is
we
not
look at
right
it?
now.
So that was just the clock system and PAs was part of
Yeah,
it.
it's
So now,
going to be, so just get it on.
okay. Well, I mean, we don't really have a choice because
No,
you need to have
no.
working phones.
Yeah, for sure.
We're dropping a call
For
while
sure.
you're on the line.
And yeah, other than that, I want to say that everything is pretty much what it's.
Awesome.
Very good.
That's very good to hear.
Continuing to update the website, keeping it up as best we can, while we are kind of looking at some alternatives to streamline all of our communication, website, social media, messaging. So, but we took our suggestions from the communication audit and cleaned up the website, took off any old links that weren't working, documents are updated, and kept it up to date as much as possible. Added some new things. We have the reading plan, the curriculum guides. a staff dashboard, which is a little more streamlined for staff. They don't have to go find a link. Everything is just on one page. And then we added the Alice facts. So keeping that current for our parents. And it's not going to read it all to you. You guys can actually go on the website and read it. But it is just a slideshow explaining what each thing stands for.
Frequently asked questions.
Yeah.
Ask questions. Keeping the information vanilla too, so that it's just informational, nothing specific to our district.
So you could go on to the website and take a peek at it and read it more.
I'm gonna do that. I haven't seen the updated one. Oh
There's
yes,
also
I
a-
haven't used the website very often because truly it was confusing and hard to navigate. So,
And the problem with the website, with any website, is as more information goes on there, you kind of lose sight of where to put it.
Yep.
And that's what was happening to us, Tim was giving me information for, what was that, one that we, Title IX?
Title IX.
Title IX, but it was like in 3 different places. You don't need to have it in all those places.
Right.
And then one thing gets updated and the other one doesn't, so it happens. But yeah, so streamlining all that is definitely, and cleaning it up has definitely helped.
very good.
Was there anything that they brought to your attention that you were surprised by, or the more they jumped in, anything any suggestions they gave us, or any other changes they found that we should consider, or was it pretty much what we thought up front?
Yeah, it was pretty cut and dry.
Okay.
My thing was that you don't really pay attention to the numerous places that information was, like even just the calendar. The calendar was on multiple locations, and then if you didn't update all of those locations, something was wrong somewhere. And so keeping everything in one location, with one link is definitely going to help things going forward. And even if we don't go to a different, platform, I'm still gonna plan on doing that. Instead of doing different pages, I'm just doing a link so that the link, no matter what page it's on, once we change that one link, it changes everywhere. So learning from my mistakes, definitely, but yeah, getting streamlined is helping that website a lot.
Awesome.
There's also a link with information if you wanted to talk to your student, or if you wanted to have a conversation before or after Alice training. So when you do go look at it, there's a little link in there that you can go to that has some good information.
Very nice.
The last thing I have is that we are planning on having our tech committee meeting October 1st at grade 40. And Joe, Amy, are you guys still planning on being there? Yes? Awesome.
Oh shoot, I'm looking at December. Hold on one second. I know I put it in my calendar.
Yep, so Julie's done a really nice job of updating things, keeping things going with CompuNet. CompuNet, I think, has been pretty responsive. And we meet, the three of us meet once a week. Pretty soon, I'll drop off that, and it'll just be Julie and CompuNet meeting. And then, as I put in the board updates, we are looking at, I can't keep all these quotes straight, like the panic button, which I'm meeting with Francisco tomorrow, and I looked, I was like, who's Francisco? I don't have Crystal telling me who Francisco is.
Can we just go back? Can we go back 1 second? The technology meeting, the 4th, you said, right?
First.
So first. Okay.
Yeah.
At 3:40.
So-
That is going to be a problem for me. I will not be able to attend that one.
We'll send the minutes out. But we are looking at different platforms that can help streamline this, and that connects to social media, makes it all sort of in one place, and it would significantly support Julie's time in having to do some of those things. And so
Sounds like it's reducing some of the ball.
So right now you do, obviously, and again, we don't have to go elaborate on this, but you're saying like the social media pieces, that all, like if you update something, you have to go to Facebook, Twitter,
Yes.
Instagram.
So what we want is something that
Facebook
parents.
and Instagram, you should be able to link into
Yeah.
one, to where you're only posting
Because
from
it's
one to
by-
both platforms.
Believe it or not, you can't, because of the way that it's set up. When you do like it's not a business, but however it's set up, it's not linking because it's not a
It's not
personal account.
Joe Hurst.
Oh, yeah, okay. I get
So
it.
I literally
I
have
see
to
what you're
go, and there's different programs that you can buy
Hootsuite.
To do that.
to do it, but
Crazy.
Because the only reason I asked is because I know with the business, I can do it. So
Yeah.
like if I want to post something for the restaurant, I can go to Instagram, and they let me cross post directly to Facebook, but it is set up as a business account through a personal account. So it's okay.
So,
Okay.
okay, that's it. So we're on to,
Thanks, Julie.
yeah,
Yes,
thanks,
thank you.
Julie. Oh, why is my, oh, because this isn't plugged. See.
So fund balance here, do we have any discussion regarding this before we?
So I know we talked about it a little bit at our workshop, and I just, obviously from a transparency standpoint, the auditors have always said somewhere between that 20 and 30% mark is where we want to be. I guess I'm putting it out there just so everyone kind of understands where this is coming from, and it's not just, a blind, arbitrary move that we're doing. So, we've had, quite frankly, at 30%, and I think you alluded to it in the annual meeting, it's going to be up to 36 or 38%. So it's healthy, right? Which is good. It shows we've been fiscally responsible. But again, at 25%, we're still showing that we're fiscally responsible. So,
Well, historically, we've been informed that our fund balance is in a much healthier position than what the standard for the area is.
yeah, and I think Gary Ott, right, usually in his letter to us when he gives us that 90-page fancy folder that says he's audited us, is their recommendation is between 20 and 30%. So I guess I'm just saying it so it's out there in the public and people understand why we're looking at changing it. We're not going against what our auditors are saying, and the suggestion is being made to still, we're going to be in the middle of where that suggestion is.
Maybe. Any thoughts?
No, we talked about it more in depth the other day.
All right, do we have a motion to approve changing fund balance amount from 30 to 25%?
I will make a motion, we approve changing the fund balance amount from 30% to 25%.
I will second that motion.
Mr. Gentile made the motion, Ms. Regner seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion to approve changing our fund balance amount from 30 to 25% is approved.
Okay, and then regular next meeting is October 22nd, but possible board workshop October 29th or October 9th. And then
Do we want to consider making a motion to change our executive session based on the fact that we're down 2 and this is a significant discussion?
I mean, I'm okay with it. I just don't know, and I don't know if we have to move into closed session to have this conversation about tabling it or moving it. I'm okay if we have to have a special meeting just to accommodate it.
I am too.
And I don't know if legally what that entails, Kim. So
I'm fine with that too.
I think we should have the executive session. It will be
Moving
shorter, but I think that I need some information and direction.
just for the framework
Yeah,
of it.
because it needs to keep moving.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, do we have a motion to move to executive session?
I will make a motion. We move to executive session.
Second,
I will second that motion.
Mr. Gentile made the motion, Mr. Regner seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to move to executive session carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Andrea, have a good night. Andrea, let me know if